and oh boy, I was not expecting this.
Hello fellow Earthlings, it's Libs, and for today's video I'm going to be reading 3 books from around the world. So this is a concept I've wanted to do for a really long time. Most of the books that I read tend to either be by American or British authors or set in America or England, and I kind of just want to diversify my reading a little bit more. So I've been reading a few more books in translation this year, but I really want to focus on branching out a little bit more. So I'm really excited about the 3 books I'm going to be reading for this video. I intend to do more, we'll kind of make this be a series where I read books from around the world. And yeah, I'm really excited to share the 3 books I'm going to be reading. So first I'm going to be reading The Housekeeper and the Professor, which is a Japanese book. Then I'm going to be reading, I've forgotten the name of it already, The Revolt, which is a French book. And then I'm going to be reading The Kite Runner, which is a book from Afghanistan. So I'm really excited to read these books. I'll tell you all about the authors and translators at the end of the video, I think. But right now I'm just really excited to get on to reading. Hello, it's Libs from the future. I forgot to give you guys a synopsis for any of the books that I'll be talking about in this video. So The Housekeeper and the Professor is written by Yoko Ogawa and translated by Stephen Schneider. It's the story of this housekeeper in her 20s who is taking care of this elderly maths professor who, due to an injury, his memory only lasts 80 minutes at a time, and it's the story of how they learn to kind of understand each other and the relationship that develops between the protagonist's 10-year-old son and the professor. It has been many hours. I'm back now to tell you about the other books that I read for this video. So The Revolt is by Clara Dupont-Monod, and it is translated from the French by Ruth Diver, and this is a book about Eleanor of Aquitaine and her son Richard I, or more commonly known as Richard the Lionheart, and it explores why Eleanor and her children revolted against Eleanor's husband, Henry II of England. It explores, the relationship between mother and son and all these things that happen in their lives. And then the synopsis for the final book is for The Kite Runner, which is a story about this young boy living in Afghanistan and the relationship he has with his best friend, who's also his servant, and about how this one kind of lie changes both of their lives forever. And I don't want to say much more about it. So yes, those are the synopsis, because I forgot all about them. Hello. I just went to the hairdresser, got my hair done, and in that time I've read the first 60 pages of The Housekeeper and the Professor. I don't really know how I feel about it yet. It's quite simplistic writing, but it's a very interesting story, so I'm keen to find out a bit more. I'm definitely getting the symbolism of like the cover and the end pages and their design, so that is very cool. I'm not really sure how I feel about it yet, but I think I'm 30% of the way through, so I'm hoping things start to pick up a little bit more soon. But if not, it's just a nice, pleasant read at the moment. So I finished reading The Housekeeper and the Professor, and I thought it was just lovely. It's such a lovely story. It's very short. You're gonna have to
The first half is a bit slow, but once you've kind of understood like the importance of the math in the story, it ends up being like really emotional. And I didn't realize how much I cared about the characters until I kind of just got punched in the face with it. And I was, yeah, at the car garage waiting for the car to be serviced, and I just was reading the book and I was gasping out loud, which is a bit embarrassing, but it was just such a good book and I really felt all the emotions, and you really understand how much this little boy really like loves the professor and how much the professor loves him even though he can't remember him. And it's beautiful. I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars. I think it's one of the best books I've read so far this year. So that bodes well for the rest of this video. I'm about to start reading The Revolt, but before I do that, I'm going to Van Gogh again, and I'm going to take you with me. Officially a third of the way through The Revolt. I'm finding it to be very interesting and well researched, although it seems to be holding me kind of at arm's length a little bit. It's not very emotional, if that makes sense. It feels quite detached, but I'm curious to see how that plays out, and I guess that detachment reflects the relationship Richard the Lionheart had with his mother. So I'm curious to see how this will play out. It's more focused on him telling the story of his mother's life as opposed to a book about the two of them, which is what I thought it was going to be. It's very interesting and unique so far, so I'm keen to see how this plays out. Okay, so I finished reading The Revolt and I ended up really enjoying it. I think initially I wasn't really sure what direction it was going in, and I found the writing style quite weird, but as the book progressed it made a lot more sense to me, and I found there were just so many really beautifully written snippets within this book that were just amazing, and I have written a whole heap of quotes from it on my phone. I just thought it was a really beautiful, beautiful book. I also think it did a great job at condensing down a really big part of history. It really surprised me that there was a book that was under 300 pages that was exploring the revolt and the family dynamics of the Plantagenets. It just really impressed me that it was able to be condensed and still make sense. All kind of the fluff was taken out and it was just really focusing on the important details. Also, it's not all just from Richard's point of view. You also get a little bit from Eleanor, and then letters from Henry and from Elise, I think her name would be pronounced, I'm not quite sure. So I really appreciated that it gave a voice to particularly to Elise, because I feel like when you look at the history, she's kind of forgotten about and not recognised, or when she is recognised, people don't talk about the trauma she went through very much. I just really appreciated that this book really delved into it and didn't shy away from the awful, awful things that these people did, but also highlighted some of the good things they did and kind of showed them all as complex, complicated, weird, messy people. And I really, really appreciated that it didn't really glorify them or completely destroy their character, and I really appreciated that. I think this book was fantastic. I gave it 4.5 stars. Highly recommend. I am now 35% of the way through The Kite Runner, and oh boy, I was not expecting this. I don't know what I thought was gonna be happening in this book, but this is not what I thought. I'm very surprised that when I was in year 12, some people in my high school were studying this book. To be fair, I studied Atonement, but I studied the film, not the book. But wow, I probably should have looked up trigger warnings before I read this, but I just kind of thought I've heard so much about this book, I'd have known the trigger warnings going in. I didn't, not even a little bit. Listening to the audiobook was it's an adventure. It's an adventure I was not prepared for, even a little bit.
2 hours later.
I don't know how to explain my thoughts so far because I'm kind of just angry at the main character a lot, and I realize the character's like 12, but and looking back at things and perhaps didn't realize everything when they were 12, but they kind of did, and I'm angry. It's well written. The author reads the audiobook, so that's cool. I'm learning about a different part of the world, but all I can really think about is the really bad stuff that has happened. So, it's hard to feel inspired to keep reading when it's really depressing at the moment. I will carry on, I will keep going. I just wish that my ignorant brain had been a bit more prepared for this. Perhaps I would have found a physical copy of the book or read an ebook or something if I'd realised what some of the content was going to be, because it's just very kind of confronting to listen to it. But we shall carry on. Well, I finished reading The Kite Runner and I am sad and overwhelmed. That was an emotional read. That was somewhat difficult to listen to. I don't even know anymore. That was just a very intense experience. It's very well written. It's very evocative. You can really picture Afghanistan, and it's just very insightful and made me very hungry. I very much want some rosewater ice cream with pistachios. That sounds amazing. It's just sad, and I don't think I will ever reread this book. But I'll give it 4 stars because it's very well written and it made me feel a lot. It's not enjoyable. Okay, I actually did it. I read 3 different books, like vastly different books from around the world. And I actually had a really great time doing it. Not that I thought I'd have a bad time. It was more, all of these books were books that for the first quarter, I wasn't really sure were going to be books for me and I had questions about. But by the end, I loved all of these. The lowest ranking I gave a book was 4 stars, and that is very, very impressive. I think the book I enjoyed the least was The Kite Runner. And I still really enjoyed it. I think if you're in the mood for
a redemption story and you want to learn a little bit more about Afghanistan, then this is a fantastic book. I just think you definitely should look up the trigger warnings before reading it, because that was my main issue going in, was that I just did not realize what I was subjecting myself to, and it was a little the audiobook's great, but it might be a bit confronting having to listen to some of the things that happen. But on the other hand, it's really fantastic to hear how the words are actually meant to be pronounced. So it just depends. My second favourite book was probably The Housekeeper and the Professor. It was just a really sweet, wholesome read, and it made me appreciate math a little bit, which is something I never thought a book would make me do. But I had a great time with it, and that was 4.5 star. And The Revolt was my favourite book of this little experiment, and that was also a 4.5 star. Just such an interesting, well-crafted, well-researched, beautiful book. I loved it. It's probably in my top 10 favourite books of the year. I just had a great time with it, and I'm hoping that more of this author's work will be translated into English, because it was just such a fun time. Definitely quite dark as well. If you know anything about these historical figures, you'll kind of know what's going to be happening. But you might also want to look up trigger warnings for that one. But it was a great time. I enjoyed myself. I will definitely be doing more videos like this in the future, reading different books from around the world. But until then, I will see you next time. Bye.